back on the road for another travel job. This project was shot for a new client of ours, and it was about a 5-hour drive. So not quite as long as this job here, which I shot just a few weeks ago. This client services equipment from Pennsylvania all the way down to Florida, and I'm heading to one of their headquarters for a few days of production. As always, Nicole handled all of the planning and logistics for this project. And we talked through what we'd be shooting, we discussed some of the possible locations that we would have access to, and we also kicked around some ideas on how to go about this project based on what the client wanted. I was going to be shooting a mix of both stills and video, and the video was a challenging but a fun part of this project, which I'll get to a little later on. Heading into a travel job like this, I always like to sort through the gear I'll need to bring based on what I'm shooting and what the deliverables are. So the day or two before I get on the road, I like to lay out my gear so I know what needs to be packed. In this case, I knew I'd be facing challenges since we were going to be shooting some talking head content outdoors. And as is often the case, I was a one-man band on this project, and I also ran into some audio issues, which I'll get into. Stopped off for a quick break before getting back on the road, and once I arrived, I unloaded all the gear and set up a home base in the hotel for the week. Once I get settled, I like to lay everything out so that I can see what I'm working with and set up a charging station to get everything topped off before heading into a shoot day. Once I get that done, I like to run through all the menus and get everything prepped the day or the night before. So I'm dialing in all of our project settings for this job and making sure that everything matches up. I used a few different cameras on this job and switched things up based on the kinds of shots that I needed to get. I shot all of the outdoor talking head stuff on the FX6, and for lenses I stuck with the Sigma 24-70. It just made things a little quicker for me to move around and just be a bit more nimble as opposed to using the 28-135 kit zoom. A lot of the footage here on my channel is shot with action cameras, and I use them with these small rig ball head magic arms. It makes it a lot easier to film content since I can attach them to just about anything, hit record, and go about what I'm doing. But I've been looking for a way to speed things up with them even more, and so I picked up a few of these small rig Hawklock mini quick releases. They're really simple to use, and I like that the design is a drop-in style connection, as opposed to some of the other systems I've seen and used, where you have to first line them up and then slide them into position to secure them. As you can see, they attach and release quickly just by pulling down on the release lever, but with enough force you can just push down and they'll connect. And they've been super secure for all the accessories that I've been using them with so far. I like that they've streamlined the process for me, and they allow me to easily set them up to capture time lapses or footage without taking time away from the actual task at hand. And it's great that it's also eliminated the need to thread accessories on and off to a 1/4-20. They've been great so far, and I'd recommend them for smaller and lighter accessories like some monitors and wireless transmission systems. I know everyone's hyped on the Osmo Pocket 3 for vlogging and capturing behind the scenes. And although I've come close to picking one of them up, I just like how rugged and durable these action cameras are, especially when they're in a camera cage like I have them here. And I like that I don't have to be too careful with them like I would with the gimbal of the Osmo Pocket. In an upcoming video, I'll be talking about a project I shot for a home renovation show, which aired on HGTV. So a large part of this project was very similar to that one, in that it was very much a run-and-gun setting, where you film your subject in a man-on-the-street style interview and then shoot a bunch of supporting B-roll. The most challenging part was having to film outdoors and somehow create a halfway decent picture in the harsh sun. As I mentioned, there was no additional crew, and I wanted to keep a few things in mind when filming the talking head part. I first thought about backlighting the subject for the talking head stuff, but once we arrived on site, that just wasn't an option. One consideration I needed to keep in mind is that we would want to see the machinery that he was talking about in the background. So because of that, the decision was pretty much made for me in regards to where to point the camera. It doesn't show up as pronounced here in this wide shot, but that was a steep hill off to my left. So I wanted to avoid that as best I could, so we stayed on the higher ground, which was a bit more even and flat. One thing we talked about in pre-production was not only being able to see what was behind the subject, but for there to also be enough out of focus area so that we could overlay text and other graphics in the negative space. To diffuse the sun, I used this large silk and pulled the subject far enough away from the equipment to be able to get some good separation. The final look has a bit of a green screen look to it, but it was what we were after for the reasons I just mentioned. In terms of audio on this project, I used the Rode Wireless Pros, and looking back, one regret I had for this segment was not setting up a shotgun and a boom. Choosing to use a lav in this scenario was all about efficiency and ease of setup. It eliminated the need for an additional stand and sandbag and other grip gear and cables needed for a boom. After this talking head shot was complete, we moved on to film supporting B-roll and detail shots. Once wrapped, we moved to another location to once again film the talent talking to camera, followed by more B-roll. So not setting up a boom was all about trying to save time on the front end, but it ended up costing us time on the back end in post-production. I've kind of praised the Wireless Pros in some of my past videos, but recently I've had a handful of jobs where the audio will come in and out, and seemingly for no reason. It's been pretty frustrating, especially since all of those cases I was no more than maybe 10 feet from the subject. Now, I've set my mics up so that I can hit record on the receiver, which will give you the 32-bit flow internal recording. But with everything that happens when you're a one-man band, it can be easy to roll camera and forget to also roll sound. Fortunately, I didn't forget, so I'm certainly glad the backup recording was there, but it added extra work and time in post-production to get things synced up. You can obviously use auto-sync in your NLE, but I found that it's definitely not perfect, and on this project, it added a good amount of time to get it right. So despite how fast and easy it might be to set up a lav on location like this, moving forward, I'll be switching things up and pretty much always use a boom in addition to a lav. Let me know if you have the Wireless Pros and if you've experienced sporadic dropouts like I have. The firmware on mine is up to date, and it's only been somewhat recently that it started to drop out. And when I do get them, it's pretty significant. As in, it doesn't just drop out a word or two, it'll drop out entire sentences before it finally reconnects, which is not only frustrating but stressful when you're in the middle of production. Aside from all of that, a boom just sounds way better. We were battling some road noise and there was a large parking lot right behind me, so a bad move on my part and lesson learned for the next one. Stay tuned for next week's episode where I'll dive deeper into this project. Thanks for watching, see you in the next one.